Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Yes, let's all pray. Makanaka Jehovha tinokutendai Mwari Baba, tinoyaisha pamberi pechigaro chenyu masikati ano tichida kutendai nekuchiza panguva ino tiri vapenyu tine utano. Takuisa musangano wewe watichange tinawo mukati memwoyo yenyu, chititungamirirai Jehovha, zvese zvatichataura zvive zvinoita kuti Ishe Mwari wangu tibudirire. Tinongozvidzosa kwamuri chiti chivai nesu Jehovha mutiropafadzi. Tazviisa mukati memwoyo yenyu muzita ramambo Jesu Kristu. Amen.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. It's not, we are going to continue with a video for our ambassadors and members.
My name is Esna Chimbwanda, an ambassador for I Love Black People from Zimbabwe. I'm here to encourage our brothers and sisters in South Africa. Let's stand together and fight against racism and xenophobia. If you need any help, go on our website iloveblackpeople.com and click on the emergency button. We are here to help you. I am because
Hey, I want to Nyabo this year. My name is Amara Jones from Sierra Leone, and I am an ambassador for the I Love Black People Global Movement. Brothers and sisters in South Africa, I'm here to encourage you all that we have every reason to stay together, strong, and be united in order to fight against this racism and xenophobia. I encourage you all to stay safe and stay protected. Make sure you only visit a place that is Black owned and Black friendly. In case you need any help from us, I encourage you to visit our website at iloveblackpeople.com and click on the emergency button. We will surely come to your aid. We love you and we love you. I am because we are.
Naitwa Nixon Kiondo, ni member na ni ambassador wa I Love Black People Movement. Naikunda I Love Black People Movement shiga ni kuvuria kwindu. Tunatakiwa kutokomeza ubaguzi wa rangi pamoja na xenophobia katika nchi zote za Afrika. Cha kufanya sasa ni kupendekeza biashara tofauti ambazo zimelikiwa na Afrika katika nchi mbalimbali duniani ili kusaidia Waafrika wengine wanaposafiri wapate huduma. I Love Black People Movement, tunawapenda, tunatoa support na tunajali. I am because we are.
My name is Awad Ngwenya, an ambassador of I Love Black People in Zimbabwe. I would like to encourage all our fellow brothers and sisters in South Africa, in case of any emergency, visit iloveblackpeople.com and press our emergency button to get assistance. I am because we are Ubuntu. Thank you.
Maladi, my name is McDonald Kagio, an ambassador of I Love Black People from Zimbabwe. I would like to encourage all our brothers and sisters in South Africa to please kindly visit iloveblackpeople.com. Scroll down to the bottom left of the page. You will see a red emergency button there. Click there, enter your details, and you will be kindly assisted. I am because we are.
Mwavue, I'm Patrick Mbelechi Nyongolo, an ambassador of I Love Black People in Kenya. I want to encourage my brothers and sisters in South Africa. In case of any emergency, visit iloveblackpeople.com. Let's protect each other. I am because we are. Thank you.
I am by name Swaneza from South Sudanese, a Black African. To my fellow Black people in South Africa, my dear colleagues, I'm very sorry for what is taking place currently, but be strong, be courageous. This is not the end of the world. One day we shall come out from this racism, xenophobia, Afrophobia. Be strong, fight for your right. One day you will enjoy it. But make sure that you know the nearest hotels, shops, restaurants that are owned by a black person. Thank you.
Jambo from Tanzania. My name is Edwin Chamba from I Love Black People community. I'm here to encourage my brothers and sisters in South Africa to stand together and fight against racism and xenophobia. If you need help, you contact us at iloveblackpeople.com and press an emergency button. We encourage you to visit Black-owned and Black-friendly businesses. I am because we are.
My fellow Black people in South Africa, we are with you in the fight against racism and xenophobia. If you need help, don't hesitate to visit iloveblackpeople.com. Click on the emergency button and help will be on the way. I am because we are.
Minano, Mejano, Minuano, Maumaha, Wajimenyado. My name is Emmanuel from Ghana, an ambassador of I Love Black People. I would like to use this opportunity to admonish us all to stay together and unite ourselves together. Because with unity, there will be peace. With unity, there will be development. Wherever you are, if you need any help, just visit iloveblackpeople.com, click on the emergency button, and we take it up from there and reach out to you wherever you are. Thank you.
Black people. This is Musa from UG. Yeah, Ambassador Uganda. I love black people. As we celebrate this day, let our fellow black people who lived in the US, they are given back their freedom. I in Uganda recommend my country a safe place for black people. Big up black people. I love black people. I Uganda recommend all black people to join I Love Black. I love black people.
Greetings, I love black people. My name is Edwin Chamba. I Love Black People ambassador from Tanzania. On Juneteenth, we celebrate the day America ended black people in slavery.
Another. I am because we are.
Mulibanji. Inendine Andrew Magombo from Malawi. I'm an I Love Black People ambassador from Samora Machel ancestry. African people, black people, Ubuntu or African unity and love is our second heart. Our brothers and sisters in South Africa, the Rainbow Nation. Let's come together to live this African way. Let's join hands to fight xenophobia and racism. Together we can. Oh yes, we can. For more information, visit our website, iloveblackpeople.com. And in times of emergency, press I Love Black People emergency button. We will be there for your help. I am because we are, and together we can.
Hello, everybody.
Yes, that was a message from our members and ambassadors around the world for people in South Africa. We are going to continue with the spokesperson. The first one is Elijah Nyambuti from Kenya. Elijah Nyambuti, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Yes, you only have 1 minute to present your report.
So good morning, good afternoon, dear members. In our group, Kenya, first of all, I want to review our last week meeting, whereby our co-founder of I Love Black People, Mr. Christopher Mapondera, delivered a powerful speech on Black people, responsibilities, and xenophobia in South Africa. The Pan-African class session was led by Nana Akua, who talked about effective method of handling stress, and Dr. Tyreen Wright, who took us through chapter 5 on rebellion crisis in Pan-African class. So in our country, Kenya, we in our country, Kenya, we encourage members to recommend Black-owned, Black-friendly businesses. We also encourage members to visit I Love Black People movement website, group, and register as members or ambassadors. We also invite friends and family to join I Love Black People movement. We encourage our members to join our Saturday Zoom meetings. In the case of any emergency, we encourage members to visit our website and click the emergency button. The COVID-19 updates in our country, Kenya, are the total confirmed COVID-19 cases are 201,009. The total number of COVID-19 recoveries are 188,222. The cumulative fatalities are 3,910. The total number of people fully vaccinated are 647,393. So, my brothers and sisters, let's strive to change. Let's strive to make a change in Africa and end xenophobia and racism. I am because we are.
Yes, thank you so much. I am because we are. Up next, we have Robert Kasivuru from Uganda. Robert, can you hear us?
Getting you?
Yes, you only have 1
Getting
minute
you.
to present your report.
Okay. Greetings. I love Black people. These are the activities which are done in our country, Uganda. Members who attended the last Saturday call were thanked and encouraged to keep the spirit. Efforts to protect the Black people against racism and xenophobia were put in by recommending Black-owned and Black-friendly businesses, inviting friends and family to attend the Saturday Zoom call on the 31st. That one was also put into consideration. Also, the powerful speech which was actually given by our co-founder, Christopher Mapondela, was also tried to be screened into it. COVID-19 cases in Uganda today, total confirmed cases are 93,282. Recovered cases, 81,014 cases. Death cases, we have 2,632. Average cases reported per day currently, 275. About 1,135,035 doses are vaccinated, which is about 1.3% of the grand population of Uganda. Thank you. Because we are.
Yes, thank you so much. I am because we are. Up next, we have Derry Anthony from Ghana. Derry Anthony, can you hear us? Okay. So up next, we have Roland Gassam from Cameroon. Roland Gassam, can you hear us? Yes. You,
Hello.
Yes, you have only 1 minute.
Thank you, Yvonne. Okay, thank you. Thank you, brothers and sisters, and good evening. Let us share I Love Black People Cameroon weekly report. Date 30th July 2021, period under review from 24 July 2021 to 30th July 2021. Resume meeting was also on Saturday after preparation of the time and the last call and the review. He encouraged everyone to register the next conference call to be on the link which people can apply to become ambassador, and he called brothers and sisters to invite more friends and family members to join the movement, encourage to continue identifying, recommending more safe places for Black people globally. We moreover welcome new members and wish a happy Independence Day to Liberia on July 26. COVID-19 update in Cameroon. Confirmed cases 82,065 with 1,335 deaths reported and a total of 331,875 vaccine doses have been administered from Cameroon. Here is Roland Gasson. Thank you very much. I am because you are.
Thank you very much, Roland Gassam. I am because we are. Up next, we have Victor Kamara from Liberia. Victor Kamara, can you hear us? Victor Kamara, can you hear us?
Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, good greetings, hello people family. I'm Victor Kamara reporting from Liberia. Weekly activities in our group country includes the following. On Monday, the 20th of July was the independence of Liberia. A brief history and relationship between Liberia and the United States were forwarded in our group by the I Love Black people. More so, the link was posted for members to register their attendance for today's meeting. Additionally, the formal or non-partisan posts were published by Mr. Skinner, our co-founder. Updates of COVID-19 in our country includes total death 553, infected cases 6,272, recovery 3,217. Thank you. I am because we are.
Yes, thank you very much. I am because we are. Our last spokesperson is Zoe Owusu. Zoe Owusu from Ghana, can you hear us?
Yes, please. I hope I'm loud and clear.
Yes, you only have 1 minute.
All right. Hi. I Love Black People Ghana Chapter Weekly Reports, dated 30th July 2021. Week under review, 24th to the 30th July 2021. Summary of activities. Last week, our most Pan-African entertainment and health class session with Dr. Terren Wright and Nana Ikua, a traditional healer and founder and director of the Natural Path Holistic Wellness Center, LLC, was successfully delivered. Our regular Tuesday newsletters, which highlights on education, health, legal, finance, transportation, beauty, food, and accommodation contents. Members are encouraged to submit their contributions on Thursdays for publishing. We join our brothers and sisters on the 26th July to celebrate in memory the first African nation to gain independence, that's 1847, in the African continent, Liberia. I Love Black People members were encouraged to follow, like, retweet, and comment on the various social media platforms of the group, that's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and others. Our honorable co-founder, Sinclair Skinner, reaffirmed the mission and vision of the group and advised every active member to embark on a weekly contribution to various I Love Black People movement platforms, activities in protection against racism and xenophobia. In the heat of racism and xenophobia in South Africa, members are encouraged to submit a Black-owned, Black-friendly businesses to the group website with the formats provided to the various groups chats. I Love Black People members, family, and friends are to use our emergency button at the bottom left of the iloveblackpeople.com website in the heat or fight of racism and xenophobic attacks wherever you find yourself. Members who went against the group's mission, objectives, goals were informed to stick to the group's mission, objectives, and goals only if they want to enjoy their membership. I Love Black People members, that's old and new, are hereby encouraged to stick to the I Love Black People mission and contribute only to the fight against racism and xenophobic attack. Members who weren't able to attend the Zoom conference call session on last Saturday are encouraged to do so this time and further recommend others as well on this Saturday meeting. Quote of the week: I have learned that success is to be measured not so much by the position that one has reached in life as by the obstacles which he had to overcome while trying to succeed. Booker T, Washington. Live it, love it. You are black. We are black. I am because we are. Weekly COVID-19 updates, Ghana. Total number of cases, 103,019. Number of deaths, 823. Recoveries, 97,213. This report is from Ambassador Zoe Owusu Agbe, Patrice Lumumba Ambassador. I love black people. I am because we are. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. I am because we are. Up next, we have, Mr. Mapondera. Mr. Mapondera, can you hear us? Mr. Mapondera, can you hear us?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, that's good.
So, okay.
And
Yes.
good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Wherever you are, it's always a pleasure to talk to you on Saturdays and share some of my views, thoughts on different issues concerning our Pan-African world. This week, my main Pan-African news is that the EFF of South Africa celebrating its 8th year since its inception. I want to talk a little bit on the EFF, but in the context of what youth or young people can do to change situations in their country. For those who may have been following the origins of EFF, it started off when Julius Malema, who was the head of the youth movement in the ANC, came to a position where he had to leave the party. One may say he was expelled from the ANC, or, but political issues, are very difficult to define. But nevertheless, Malema found himself, along with other youth, being at a situation where they could not live with the contradictions within the ANC, and so they decided to form their organization, the EFF. Now, what did that mean? There are two situations that were quite symptomatic. One is that when a revolutionary party ceases to be in touch with all its elements, then it will find itself in a situation where it starts disintegrating. I'm not just saying that the ANC is disintegrating, but it lost a very vibrant part of its organization. As I indicated last time, that the most change the world over has come through young people. And this is an example of which young people in South Africa did not agree with the course that the movement they were part of was taking. After independence, it appears that the ANC did not take an aggressive posture with regards to land ownership by Black people in South Africa. It did not take a strong posture with regards to Black economic empowerment or economic control of South Africa. it appears also that there was a divide between what the older generation or the older element of the party was no longer in tune with the younger generation. The young people wanted to see change, but that change was not taking place fast enough. The other element, as I mentioned last time, I was talking about the revisionism in a revolutionary party, where during the struggle you are working on one ideology, but once you become independent, then you start revising your priorities. And I think there was this element where the organization was no longer defining itself in the context of what the armed struggle was all about. They had to reconcile with the system they inherited. South Africa was one of the most capitalistic, exploitative systems that we had in Africa. So for the young people to try and see where exactly do they fit in that environment, they couldn't find it. Rather than wait and have the older generation define how they can do it and what pace and so forth, they decided they're going to do it themselves. As you may know, if you are students of South African history, when the EFF started out, people kind of wrote them off and said, oh, these young people, where are they going to go and so forth. So on the first elections, I think they had 40 members who qualified for parliament. And in the last elections, they now have about 80 members of parliament, and they have become the official opposition party in South Africa. To me, that is quite a big deal to see where young people have worked with the system and get to the point where they are now the main opposition, which means they have a direct role to play in any policies and laws that are now initiated in South Africa. Now, the potential that they may end up being a majority party is there. You know, again, one cannot predict how long this would take, and also it depends on how much the ANC will also try to adjust itself so that it does not lose the dominance it has in the political arena. Now, let's assume EFF is going to end up being a majority party in the country. What is it that it has to do to prepare itself for such a role? One is that as young people, in many cases, you are not exposed for international world and community, which if you are in power, you will need to collaborate and work with other organizations who may be of this similar ideology. You will need to establish relationships or alliances within, the country itself. Alliances with such movements as the labor movement, the women's movement, the young youth movements, and all that, because all this make up the political landscape of the country. So if you are going to prepare yourself to become the main ruling party, it means you have to get your tentacles in all these aspects of your society and create these alliances. Because at the end of the day, no political party, wherever it is can have 100% support and be able to rule strictly on the basis of its own membership. But you have to have these different alliances that help you to get into power and be able to manage the country more effectively. I mean, if you don't have a good relationship with the labor movement, it means you don't have a way of trying to manage the country's economy if the labor movement is taking a whole different position that is contrary to what you are trying to achieve as a government. Same thing applies, with the women's movement. As you know, in most African countries and in many countries, women play a very pivotal role in the economic development of any country, in the socio and social development of any country. These are the mothers of the nation. They look after our children. They look at the growth of our children. And they provide the stability that the nation requires. So as a political movement, you have to be sensitive, to what are the things that are essential to bring about a good, better social environment for women, how you assist in their development and have them play a pivotal role in the affairs of the country. So basically, I feel that we now have a visible example of what young people can do to bring about change. I think some years ago, if one says, "Oh, we can have a youth movement," that can play a pivotal role in the economic or politics of the country, people would kind of doubt and say, "Well, how are you going to do it?" When you have all these mature, well-established political movements. But when those political movements are no longer in sync with the needs of the people, then ultimately to start disintegrating and people trying to take a different course of action. This is a phenomenon again that is very common. If you look at all the political movements in Africa, the organization that started off at the time of independence or before the independence, at the end of the day, you find that it ends up being split along ideological lines, or when people feel that the pace of change is too slow for them and they want to take a different course. So I'd like to take this moment that we celebrate 8 years of EFF inception, and that we wish them well. The good thing with any opposition, constructive opposition, is that it keeps the ruling party in check, where they cannot just do things as they please, but they have to make sure that they balance what their aspirations as a movement are and the aspirations of the nation are, and try to make sure that there's a healthy relationship and union between the two organizations. So that's what I have for you today. And if you have any questions, we can discuss, or if anything came from last time, I think we have a few minutes to do that.
Yes.
Okay, Yvonne, I think I'm done.
Yes, we have one question from Frank Moyo from Tanzania. He's asking who are the supporters of all happening in South Africa?
What, sorry, supporters?
Yes, the supporters.
Well, I can't tell exactly from 10,000 kilometers away, but just listening to the news and watching the news and so forth, there's so much going on in South Africa. So it depends which angle we are looking at. If it is the question of the instability that was taking place a few days ago, there are so many factors, that I guess the primary issue was the arrest of Jacob Zuma. Those who follow him and who also felt, that his arrest was unjustified, were part of it. but they were also opportunists, that to take advantage of a situation like that and use it as a way of trying to further destabilize the situation by, looting and, vandalism and all that type of thing. To me, there's no room for looting or vandalizing the same institutions that the following morning you are going to need them, because that's where you buy your food, that's where you buy your medicines and so forth. So I'd say there are, probably people who legitimately felt, Jacob Zuma's arrest, was called for and justified, and then those opportunists who took advantage of that and saw it as a way of vandalizing and looting stores and groceries and supermarkets, which was quite counterproductive. There could also be an element of external influence into the destabilization as well. Political events, they've got multiple dimensions. You may see it showing itself in one dimension when the actual cause of it could be, 10,000 miles away. So that right now on the surface, I say that is really what is more visible. That the people who were not happy with Zuma's arrest and those opportunities to try to take advantage of it, of the situation, and come and vandalize and to loot things. Okay, anybody else? Anything else?
Yes, there are more like comments, but we'll go through them next week because we are running out of time.
Okay.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Mapondera.
Yeah, okay. All right, that's good.
Yes,
All
up
right,
next.
you all have a great weekend.
Okay, thank you, sir. Yes, up next we have Nana Akua. Can you hear us?
Good morning. Yes, I can. Good morning.
Yes, good morning.
Oh, you ain't got your camera on today, Yvonne.
Yes.
She like, not today, not today. Once in 3 months. Okay. All right, fine. All right. Well, greetings, everyone. Thank you all. Thank you for the ones who do have your cameras on. I love to see beautiful Black faces. Greetings, everyone. There she go. Hey, everyone. Hello, everyone. I appreciate you all joining us again. So this is our 4th week for the Pan-African Healthcare class. And so our topic today is detox and cleansing. So I hope you all had a busy week. So I didn't post every day. So a couple of days you got double reading assignments, right? I try to follow directions, but I failed this week. So you may not have had a reading assignment every day, but I doubled up a couple of days, right? Because I got a little behind, but it was a lot of information. I hope you got to go through it. We will go through it now today. And hopefully, if you reviewed it and you have some questions, I think what I'd like to do, and I like trying to engage in some way, right? Since I can't hear you. I can see some of you, but I can't hear you. I'm a really interactive person, so I'm gonna do what I've done a few times before. If you can put in the chat your definition or your understanding, just a quick, statement of what you think detoxification is or cleansing, or ways that you may cleanse or detox. But give me some feedback, some interaction about that. Even if you didn't get to look at the reading assignments, what I'd really like you to do, if you can list some things in the chat about what you think detoxification or cleansing is, some methods of doing that. I'd like to get your input with that. Or even if you want to share something, if you kind of throw something out there, Or if you read through the materials, can anyone tell me what one or all of the paths of elimination are? Yeah, consider this your test, right? I like kind of going back and forth and getting feedback, seeing if people already either have an understanding of something or from the readings have, you know, quickly seen some information on the topic. I'd love to get your feedback. Yes, so yes, thank you. Cleansing the body of toxins that harm the body, absolutely. Removing toxins, yes. All the vermin, all right. That's a good word. Yes, all the toxins, all the waste, all the poisons. Yeah, taking care. Yes, and I'm glad taking care of our mental health, our relaxation. We specifically talked about that last week. However, we do sometimes have to detox our minds, right? And that's also a way. And I'm glad that Felipe Jr., thank you for that. I'm glad that you mentioned that, because we are going to predominantly talk about physical detoxification, but yes, a lot of times we got a lot of junk up here, right? We have a lot of toxins in our mind. We do negative self-talk. We, you know, have negative thoughts. We do things that are destructive and toxic to our mental and emotional health. So yes, thank you. Anybody else? Okay. So Yvonne, if you'll let me share the screen, I tried to pull it up. You still probably see all my files, but if you let me share the screen.
Yes, you're allowed right now.
Okay. Oh, it was there. Great. Okay, now I just have to turn it around. I think you see it, right? Cleansing and detox.
Yes.
The slide. Okay, great. So, basically, the couple of people that did respond, thank you. You pretty much have it correct. But we're going to talk about what the definition of detoxification is, what are methods of cleansing and detoxifying is, the paths of elimination, how to detox internally, how to detox externally. This is a slide from an in-class presentation, so we used to make products, so you'll just overlook that piece there, but we usually do like a parasite cleanse and things like that. What is detox and cleansing? I pretty much use these terms interchangeably. They're one and the same for the most part. I think that, and look at that, we had 34 people. It was 50 people, no. How many people was on here? 48, anyway. Y'all know I always comment about that. But thank you for those that are here. What do people say? Those of us who are supposed to be here are here, right? Okay, I mostly buy that. So detoxification, this is basically the process of removing a poisonous or harmful substance from the body, or at least neutralizing or mitigating the effects of that poison or toxin, right? Cleansing, the process of cleansing something, thoroughly washing something, ridding the body of any unhealthy, unnecessary substances. Again, slightly different explanations, but pretty much one and the same. So we'll talk about ways to cleanse. You might use herbs or homeopathics. You may use diet, such as doing a detox diet, doing clean or healthy eating, raw foods, mild food diets, things like that. You might fast. You may do fasting with juices, fasting with chlorophyll, water. You may do fasting from certain foods. You may do a detox body or foot bath, massage, skin brushing. These are different ways of cleansing, and we'll go into more detail with those. But what I want to also talk about is some of the side effects of detoxification. So We know that it's necessary to cleanse the body. We know that we have to get rid of toxins in the body, but we also should recognize that there may be some unpleasant side effects of that. So just know that this is normal. I used to lead fasting and purification workshops and shut-ins where we would do all day and all night. I would have people come to my office and we would juice, do juice fasting. We would do little mini lectures about how to cleanse. We would do skin brushing. We would do foot baths. We would do colon hydrotherapy. We would do actual prayer and meditation. We would sleep all, night there in that site together, but mainly throughout the night, we would do different healing rituals, releasing rituals, things of that nature. And there would definitely be occasions where, and this was in the past, I don't do those anymore, but in the past, there would be occasions where people would experience these side effects of cleansing or detoxifying, right? So, and they're very common, but can be unpleasant. So if you're not used to it, it can be a little uncomfortable. So before doing any of these things, it's important to take a class of this nature so that you're just familiar, right? So body aches are common, headaches, body odor, bad breath, general fatigue or weakness, purging of different types, skin rashes. All of these are common things because the body is throwing off toxins. It is releasing poisons and such that are no longer needed, or the body is getting rid of, and there may be some resistance. Okay, you look like me. Somebody got the I can't even think of the word. Oh gosh, trying to see. Why can I not think of the word? But yes, when I have to put my glasses on to see. So I hope everybody can read. Some of these words are a little small. Sometimes I have difficulty reading. But so definition, we've discussed. Side effects, we've discussed. So let's talk about what we would then be detoxing or cleansing from. There are 5 what we call paths of elimination in the body. So these are the organs that are responsible for either purifying the oxygen or air or blood or solid waste or liquid waste from the body, right? So these are kidneys, liver, colon, skin, and lungs, right? These are your organs that are responsible for eliminating some toxins from some means out of the body. All of them are important. A lot of times we focus on just 1 or 2 and maybe not realizing that there are in fact 5. And so just know that when one area is overworked and not adequately flushed or cleansed or detoxed, it will then likely stress another organ. So colon cleansing is wonderful, it's necessary. However, if you also are in need of a liver cleanse or a kidney cleanse, then know that you'll still have to do other routines or rituals, take different herbs, do different types of detoxifying regimens to cleanse those organs as well. Or you may have regular bowel movements, but because of environmental toxins or because of smoking or any number of things, your lungs may be compromised and may need detoxification. So just know that all of these areas are important. We may do the cleansing with herbs, we may do foods, we may do juicing, we may use essential oils, but these are our 5 paths of elimination. So we know that there are internal ways to detox the body. We may do herbs, These might be herbs like Cascara sagrada or senna or slippery elm or turkey rhubarb, or any of the kind of purgative types of herbs that allow the bowels to evacuate, right? But it may also be herbs like dandelion or milk thistle that'll cleanse the liver. Or it may be herbs like turmeric or ginger or uva ursi or parsley or buchu that will cleanse the kidneys. Or it may be herbs like licorice or mullein that will detox the lungs. Or it may be herbs like burdock or yellow dock that will cleanse the blood and therefore heal or detox the skin. So there are different herbs that may be used. There are various homeopathic remedies that are on the market that do cleansing of the different organs. There may be foods that we'll use, and there are some recipes that are included in this handout that will give you instruction on how to cleanse the liver and the kidneys and the colon and so on and so forth. And so we'll go through some of those recipes momentarily. And then we also know fasting. There are different types of fast, different times of year to fast, different lengths of fast, and different types of fast, as I previously mentioned. It could be just eliminating certain foods or an elimination fast. It may be a juice fast or a liquid fast. It may be a water fast. I don't necessarily suggest, but there are definitely people who do it and have, good results from what they, report. But just know that there are different ways to do internal detoxification. And then of course we have external detox, right? So we know that we may do different types of baths. We can put salts in our baths, oils in our baths, different herbal combinations in our baths. We may do massage to externally detox, to move around the chi or energy, or release any blockages and such that are in the body, right? So lymphatic massage, shiatsu massage, acupressure, using different manual manipulations of the body to relieve toxins. Skin brushing is another one. This is a way to detox the skin, to get rid of excess dead, dry skin cells from the skin, to allow the skin to breathe and to continue to act as the elimination organ that it is. It is our largest organ. And so a lot of time the skin gets overworked and under cared for, right? Colon cleansing. We know that there are different ways to externally cleanse the body through the colon. This might be with enemas or colon hydrotherapy. And then we have baths. It could be foot baths specifically, such as ionic foot detox baths, or there are even clay baths where there's a combination of like green clay or bentonite clay mixed with different herbs to detox in a foot bath, or you may use salts or herbs or essential oils specifically in the feet or for the feet to detox or to get toxins out of the body. So there are many different ways to detox. So let's get into some specifics. Foods for healthy detox, right? So this would be under our internal cleansing, right? So we know that, yeah, you definitely need your looking glass for this, because this is definitely small. I still can't think of the word for that, but it's silly. But I'll have to pull out my glasses. But well, yeah, that's so much better. So we know that there are different cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, cabbage, things of that nature, chard, radishes, turnips. These are all foods that are good for detoxification. Our leafy greens like bok choy and cilantro and parsley and spinach, all your greens, your dandelion greens, your beet greens, your collard greens, all of these are good foods to use in a detox diet. they even go and mention other foods like the berries that provide phytonutrients, right? Blackberries, blueberries, cherries, grapes, pineapples, pomegranates. So all of this list, even some amino acids, some nuts and seeds, which are what are the good fats and oils to use: avocado, coconut milk, olive, coconut oil, flaxseed oil, all of these things, right? So these are just some possible foods that are good to incorporate during internal detox, right? And so again, this handout just gives you more options, that some that we didn't mention: beets, carrots, green tea, apples, turmeric, garlic, limes, lemon, arugula. All of these are great, right? Foods, and these specifically cleanse the liver, right? And we know that if we have a chronic disease or illness, we know that the liver is overworked. We know that if we take prescription drugs, or definitely if we take recreational drugs, but the liver takes a hit for all of these types of things, right? In addition to whatever environmental toxins or other pollutants that we just get into contact. But we know that if we are on medication, if we know that there are certain illnesses and disease-causing pathogens that are in the body for sure, heavy metals, whatever the case may be, we know that the liver is in need of detox, right? So lemon water, cilantro, garlic, beets, avocado, turmeric, these are all excellent for liver cleansing. This handout just gives a 3-day, and this is very small. So this is something, if you print out, it might be easier to read, but this is just sort of a 3-day liver cleanse. It just sort of gives you an outline of what to do throughout the day and what foods and liquids to take in. This is a juicing recipe, so with a juicer, but if you just have a blender and you choose to kind of get all the bulky fiber of these vegetables, feel free, but if possible, I think juicing is the best in a lot of situations. And then maybe save the pulp, make something else with it, a soup or stock or something like that. But this is a recipe for liver cleansing juice. So it has beets, carrots, lemon, cucumber, and ginger, okay? And here's a smoothie recipe. This is okay for the liver, but this is probably more so suited for kidney cleansing, right? So this is one that's supportive for the liver and the kidneys. It is a smoothie. Some people love smoothies and they kind of mix any and everything in with their smoothies. This is a recipe for that. Celery, cucumber, pineapple, lemon, parsley, ginger, and coconut water, right? So these are just some food options, some internal detox options for you to cleanse these paths of elimination. We mentioned turmeric, but I found this handout that I thought was really great. Turmeric is not just good for the liver, it is also good for the kidneys, it's good for the immune system, it's good for circulation, it's good for colds and flu and cough, purifies the blood. And we know that anything that treats the liver treats the blood, right? Because that is what the liver is responsible for. So know that if there's a skin issue, liver cleansing or blood purifying herbs or alterative herbs are what we're looking for. They're one and the same. So this is an excellent herb to kind of implement into your regimen and to maybe add to your, culinary, routine, adding to your foods. So a little bit more about kidney cleansing. So the kidneys, we know, are great. That its job is to filter fluids, the toxins from fluids out of the body, right? And so these diuretic types of foods and herbs are always going to be a great option for cleansing the kidneys. Lemon, parsley, cucumber, celery. These are all foods that are great for cleansing the kidneys. Thought I had another one, but I mentioned slightly a few earlier. Uva ursi, buchu, juniper berry. These are all kidney cleansing herbs as well. Add those to your notes, or add that you can do in conjunction with, you know, your cucumber, your parsley, and celery. Our next path of elimination, we talk about the colon a lot, right? And so we often will focus on bowel movements, relieving the bowels, removing solid waste from the body through the bowels, right? And that's crucial, that's important, that's something we should do every day, at least once or twice a day. If you do more, great. We'll talk in the next slide about what that waste should look like so that we know that it is healthy bowel that is coming out of the body, right? But internally, what we know will cleanse the colon are flax seeds, alfalfa, aloe vera, peppermint, spirulina and wheatgrass, chickweed, cascara sagrada, fennel seeds, mango, probiotic yogurt, fermented foods like kefir, and then, you know, good healthy organic fruits such as apples, grapes, pineapples, kiwi, papaya. These are all foods that are fiber rich, right? They have what's called pectin. So this is fibrous fruits that we know have valuable enzymes that will help the colon cleanse itself, okay? And then this next handout, this is the Bristol stool chart. Your bowel movements all have some shape, consistency, color, and such, right? And so for as much as you can on a very regular basis, I highly suggest that you keep track and observe what your stool looks like. And what we ideally want is somewhere in the middle, right? So we want, 3, 4, 5, I think are all good options. I think we clearly know that type 1 is definitely not what we want. We don't want very hard lumps that look like nuts that are hard to pass, right? We want a bowel movement that is softer, has maybe some shape to it, easy to move out. You can tell that it passes easily, and that sort of thing, right? And we know that we definitely do not want something that's entirely liquid, right? Watery, runny stools, we know are also bad, right? And so this is just to give you an idea of sort of where you may be in terms of your bowel movements and what your stool should look like, okay? So, okay, so we've talked about internal methods, most of the recipes and most of the handouts, right? Talked about internal ways to cleanse the liver, the kidneys, the colon, right? So let's talk about a couple of the external methods of detoxifying. So I mentioned skin brushing, I mentioned some of the baths, right? So, and honestly, if you do not have hypertension and are not sensitive to salt, I think that Dead Sea salts or sea salt blends, Epsom salts, different things like that are great tools to use in your bath water to cleanse or detox the body through the skin. However, if you are hypertensive and have problems with keeping your blood pressure regular salt baths are not something that are generally recommended, right? But if so, or if not, I should say, consider regular salt baths. That's a really easy, simple bath that can really draw out any aches and pains that you have, can kind of help detox and pull toxins out of the body through the skin. If you cannot use salts, you can also use essential oils. I think ginger oil is excellent in a bath to detox the body. Eucalyptus, peppermint, some of these sort of astringent or really strong aromatic essential oils are good for detoxifying. I like lemon and lime essential oils or the citrus oils in detox baths. I think they usually work really well. And then I already mentioned in terms of the skin detox methods, we already talked briefly the skin brushing. Skin brushing is pretty much something you do, definitely if you're doing a fast or a cleanse. Skin brushing is where you use a natural bristle brush to gently brush any dead skin cells off of the body. So it's like a shower brush, but you never get it wet. You keep it dry, right? And you gently, with one fell swoop, up the body or up the arms, up the legs towards the heart, in smooth, strokes, not circular, not back and forth, but smooth strokes. You brush the skin in order to get rid of any skin toxins. And just know that things like boils and rashes and abscesses and different things on the skin, a lot of times are due to some, well, they're definitely due to some sort of internal toxicity. And so the body is trying to release it through the skin. So know that skin care in that regard is important, but know that usually skin issues also have to be addressed from the inside out. It's important as to what you put on your skin, of course, but we definitely know that making sure we do regular liver cleanse and liver detoxes with that also. A note on detoxing the lung path of elimination, other than the herbs that I mentioned previously, we also know that conscious breathing or conscious breath work is important in terms of detoxing the lungs. So there are many different breathing exercises and breathing techniques that can be used to get any toxic gases from the lungs. So whether it is fire breaths, whether it's long, deep cleansing breaths, whether it's alternating nostril breaths, lion breaths. There's so many different breaths. If you Google conscious breathing, breath work, things of that nature, you'll find different breathing exercises that are excellent for detoxifying the lungs. Okay, so let me go in, let me pause the sharing for a second, look at the comments. Okay. And I'm appreciative for people who explain why they disappeared, because y'all know I'd be looking at that. So yes, some people ran out of data and had to go. I understand this is a long time to stay and use all of your data on your phones or your devices. Yeah, so yeah, pimples are definitely an example of the skin trying to fight off toxins. I would do a liver cleanse. Itchy skin, pimples, issues with the skin. Like I said, I always suggest treating from the inside out. I would make sure I limit my fried foods, or maybe even do an elimination diet where for a whole period of time, say 21, 28 days, you go without fried foods. You make sure that you're drinking half your weight in ounces of water. So if you're 180 pounds, that you're drinking 90 ounces of water, for example, but getting plenty of water, putting good foods into your body, and doing liver cleansing herbs. So whether it's turmeric, or whether it's dandelion, or whether it's milk thistle, whether it's yellow dock, burdock, these are all good liver cleansing herbs that I definitely suggest. Let me see if I see any other. Yes, it's a new weekend. Okay. All right, so I think that's it. So let me now put my, as a couple of people are asking for the handouts. So nanaakua1@gmail.com is my email. So yes, you just have to remember, send me an email requesting the handouts and I will gladly do that for you. Give me one moment. So our next handout is one that I included about diabetes. I have handouts at the end of this presentation that talked about diabetes and hypertension because so many of our people suffer from these two conditions alone. And we know that there are many other conditions, right, that our people suffer through, but these are very common ones. And in a lot of cases, not in all cases, can be reversed and or avoided. So I wanted to make sure that I made mention of how to naturally heal or treat, or one of the options that you can discuss with your healthcare practitioner, right? In terms of diabetes. We know that diabetes is basically a condition where the body cannot either produce enough insulin or well, that's, I guess, the main piece, but the reasons for it, I guess, vary. So there's a problem with balancing your blood sugar, right? But what we know is, in addition to stress, in addition to, you know, weight and general health condition, we know that it is affected directly by what we consume and what we take into our bodies. So of course, we are going to, as we talked about, oh, I didn't resume my share, did I? Haha, resume share. Okay, what we know is that we have to look at what we're eating. And so one of the best ways that I know to deal with diabetes is following the glycemic index. And this basically keeping track of not only how much you eat of a food, but what you eat and what its glycemic index is. So basically the glycemic index is a food chart where they tested different foods that contain some sort of starch, right? And they basically put these foods in a category stating how quickly it elevates your blood sugar, right? And it puts these foods in low, moderate, or high categories. So we know that any food that is more than 70 is considered a high glycemic food. And these are foods that you should avoid if you are in fact diabetic, or just looking out for your blood sugar levels. You know, it runs in your family, or you know you're prone to eating a lot of sugary or starchy foods, or you're just concerned, or you're heavy around the middle and know that this could be a sort of a precursor for a diabetic or blood sugar imbalance, right? So there are many reasons that you might follow this type of routine, even if you're not diabetic, okay? So I just want to say it's not just for people who are diabetic. Even if you know you could use this, I suggest following the glycemic index. So this chart, and this one, I will admit, is not the best one, because I have to say that I think some of these foods here are probably not completely accurate. So for example, let's go under this section here. I'm sure there's probably a way I could, oh, there's a way I can highlight, isn't there? Oh no, it's not highlighting it. Okay, I thought I had discovered something new. I was gonna try and highlight. Yeah, okay, it's not working. Anyway, there's a section here that says glycemic index of vegetables, right? So these vegetables here, I wanted to point out the root vegetables. So beets is a root vegetable, carrots is a root vegetable, all these potatoes listed here, right? These are all root vegetables. I know that carrots is higher than 49. Carrots and beets are definitely sort of right around the border of 70. So they're not terrible, but we know that they're considered high starch or high glycemic index food. And pretty much all potatoes are. Your new or your baby potatoes are slightly less, but I think even this 62 is a moderate number, right? But usually, however you do that potato, and the yam would be the same way. The white African yam is definitely going to be on that starchy side. These are just foods that we really, pretty much all root vegetables, right? All of our vegetables that grow in the ground, potatoes, carrots, beets, and such, we know are going to be higher on the glycemic index chart. And we know, and what that means is it raises your blood sugar, right? It elevates, it spikes your blood sugar. The body, the pancreas has to produce enough insulin, right, to kind of balance your glucose, right? And so this yo-yo effect, this up and down effect can just be really detrimental, right? And so it can really be problematic. And we have to really, really be cautious about that. The other area that I would say, other than the obvious, because there are also some other things on here like candies and cereals and things like that, but even fruits, right? So we know that there are even certain fruits that are higher glycemic than others. Typically, your mangoes and your grapes and bananas, depending at what stage, these are things that are going to be higher. And again, I think that this list, and every time I teach this class, I say I have to find another list. I really have to find another list, because I know that there are some of these that are higher glycemic. You're generally going to want to be cautious of eating too many mangoes, too many pineapples, grapes. These numbers here, grapes, I know are more than 46. I know pineapple is more than 66. Watermelon is pretty accurate. And even though it's predominantly water, it still somehow definitely increases your blood sugar. Grapes, you know, these are things you just, cantaloupe, these are things you just don't want to do too much, too frequently if you have a blood sugar issue. So again, this chart, and I even suggest Googling glycemic index. There's even a book, Shari, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting, I am forgetting the author, but there are several, I'm sure, books on the glycemic index, or many charts that you might be able to just Google and find. But I think it's a good idea to use such a chart to figure out what foods to avoid if you're diabetic, or if you just want to make sure that you don't do a number on your pancreas and get into an issue about regulating your blood sugar, okay? Yeah, and so typically, I'm going back to the questions. I just saw that a couple of questions had come out. So generally, any hot peppers, any in the cayenne or hot pepper family, whether it's chili peppers, cayenne, any of those generally are what are considered stimulants. So they kind of help increase circulation in the body, so they can be helpful for a lot of conditions. people who maybe have cold hands and feet, or numbness in the hands and feet. Sometimes people who have just fatigue and just generally need to improve their circulation for whatever reason. Hot peppers and things of that nature kind of help to improve or increase circulation, so that, and then a lot of times in these, in different formulas, herbal formulas, you'll have some sort of hot pepper, excuse me, like a cayenne pepper, that will just help the formula, or it increases the efficacy of the formula. So specifically chili peppers, I don't know, but generally those hot peppers usually do help act as a stimulant and improve or increase circulation in the body. So I think it can be useful. Yeah, and again, if you email me, someone sent a message, I just won't have time to stop and write down emails. So if you email me and request the handouts, I will gladly send those to you so that you'll have them. I always talk about keeping these as a reference for yourself. I think that's a great idea. That's the point of putting so much effort into these handouts. I really want you to be able to go back and refer to them. So I don't want to say too much about high blood pressure per se. What I will say is this chart I just thought was interesting, how it gave a very detailed explanation of what the different ranges of blood pressure are, what systolic and diastolic numbers mean, and how they range or vary. So I wanted to include this. We know that normal is around 140 over 80. I think it says 90, but I think 140 over 80 is sort of more normal, maybe, well, let me say it this way. 140 over 80, we know is borderline on the high side. If you're having, say, 130, 120 over 80 or over 70, we know this is considered normal. And of course, we know that low blood pressure and high blood pressure are bad ideas. You know, they're not good. So most people focus on high blood pressure, but we know that low blood pressure is also an issue. We know that if your pressure is too low, you may feel tired, or you may feel weak. You may get dizzy a lot. You may have fainting. And of course, in an extreme case, go into coma, right? And of course, most people are familiar with some of the symptoms of high blood pressure, right? We know that you may have different cardiovascular issues, may suffer from kidney disease, stroke, heart attack, death, right? So we know all of the reasons to watch our pressure and how harmful high blood pressure can be as well. So I like this chart though, because it gives all of these little, you kind of have to carefully kind of read through it, right? So on the left side, it's giving hints on what are your no foods, what foods to avoid, right? So high salt foods, that's an obvious one. Even when talking about the baths, you even don't want to absorb the salts into your skin through baths. So we definitely don't want to consume them or digest them, right? So no high salt foods, no medium salt foods, it even says, right? So you want foods that are either no salt or very low salt. If you have a tendency to want salts, what I find to be helpful is something called dulse, D-U-L-S-E. It's a vegetable from the sea, or a sea vegetable, right? That is high in iodine and potassium. And a lot of times that's used as a salt alternative. Kelp is another one, which is also a food from the sea. So it naturally contains those minerals that we usually are craving when we want salt. So salt can be replaced, of course, with spices and herbs, but also with these sea vegetables like dulse and kelp. We want to avoid saturated fats. We want to avoid hydrogenated oils or partially hydrogenated oils. Now, the only way you'll know about these, right, is if you read labels. So you have to read labels. And a lot of prepackaged quick fix meals, these are going to have your partially hydrogenated oils, right? This simply means that the oils have been heated up. They've expelled them from the nut or the seed or the plant, whatever type of oil it is. There's a heating up process where they have hydrogenated the oils. And usually it's so that it lasts longer. They're looking to get a longer shelf life. It acts as a preservative, but these are foods that are harmful to the body and will increase blood pressure, among other things. So you really want to avoid partially hydrogenated oils or hydrogenated oils at all, right? We also want to stop smoking. We want to lower our weight. If we know we're overweight, we know we have some excess weight, we want to do calorie counting, exercise, cutting out different foods that we know will bring on extra pounds, whether it's cutting out sodas, whether it's cutting out fried foods, whether it's limiting starch. And the way you limit starch is follow that glycemic index, right? But, and it's not realistic for most people to just completely avoid starches. People can do that for a period of time, but usually not for the long haul, right? So what will happen is you'll have, you know, a good result for a period of time, but then you'll ease back into eating these foods that you've just kind of kept yourself from, right? So we know that we want to follow the glycemic index and just be reasonable and sensible about what types of starches we take into our bodies, right? So we know we want to exercise. We know that we want to avoid caffeine. We want to do plenty of rest, getting sufficient sleep. Some of the things will repeat, so I'm kind of skipping over. So these are things that we know will lower your blood pressure. Vitamins such as C, D, E, B complex, folic acid, niacin, minerals like calcium and magnesium and potassium. We know that these are all excellent minerals. Herbs that we know are great for lowering blood pressure. Garlic and hawthorn. We know that foods like flax oil and fish oil, we know that these are good to include in the diet. And then amino acids like L-carnitine, carnitine and CoQ10 are great. And then we want foods like apples, avocados, bananas, broccoli, fish, grapes, oats, orange juice, and in moderation, because of course orange juice, you know, is very high in calories, very sugary. So I wouldn't say do a lot of that. Wouldn't say do a lot of bananas also, because they're the starchier they are, the higher calorie they are. One banana can be 100 calories right there. So, you know, but just generally keeping all these things in mind, I think can definitely assist you with lowering your blood pressure. And water is at the bottom of that list. And we've already talked about water. I can't say enough about water. Water is the substance that gives and sustains life, and that's in any and everything. So same as regulating blood pressure, water is going to be key, okay? So I wanted to include this because I thought this little chart was very informative, all in just this one page. It gave you the ranges, the symptoms of high blood pressure and low blood pressure, and gave you a lot of helpful tools as to how to address it. And so it kind of laid it out a little more in detail here. And these remaining pages just gives you very specific, you know, ranges and such. So may not be as useful, some of these following pages, but again, I just put the entire handout here. And so the last page, what I wanted to do, and I talked about this before, I always like for you, just for yourself, because we of course are not giving actual tests, but so that you are clear for yourself and as a review, so that you know the information and that you really retain the information, I really would like you to go through each of these questions and make sure you know these answers. You know, what is wellness? At the beginning of the course, week 1, we talked about what wellness was, right? So we talked about, well, or maybe not specifically, but we talked about what holistic means. And we know that holistic healing or holistic modalities focus on the entire person, the whole person. So we know that wellness would be a balance of mind, body, and spirit, right? We know that there would be optimal health, or this is that promote optimal health, right? And so we know that there are different ways in which to achieve that. If you're talking about physical health, we're talking about eating well, exercising, even if it's stretching, even if it's body work, like, or meditative body work, like Tai Chi or Qigong or yoga or things of that nature. Or we know that if we're talking about emotional health, we're doing mind body work, where again, it could be meditative work, such as yoga, or it could be crystal healing, it could be chakra balancing, it could be any of those things that basically balance the emotional mind, the emotions in the mind. And then if we're talking about spiritual health, we know that we're talking about prayer, we're talking about meditation, we're talking about fast that may be connected with a spiritual healing routine. But in all these areas we've talked about, and back to emotions, we talked about stress release, how to heal the body in terms of balancing emotions with flower remedies, with calming herbs, with breathing exercises. We talked about stress relief tips. There were visualization exercises that we discussed last week. So there are many things that we've talked about. With the physical piece, we've talked about cleansing and detoxification today, and we talked about different ways to cleanse the body. But also, when talking about the herbs and the essential oils and the homeopathic remedies, we talked about different herbs that heal body from different types of conditions or illnesses or dis-ease, right? So being able to have all of these things in balance is what wellness is, and addressing all of those areas with natural healing modalities, right? So the holistic health, I have talked over and over again about traditional healers, using traditional healers to learn what herbs are local and available in your area. The cause of disease. I don't know if I focused enough on what the cause of disease. Typically, cause of disease is either malnutrition or toxicity. So either you are toxic and you have some kind of disease-causing microorganism in your body, or you're malnutrition. You are lacking whatever nutrients that your body needs to heal and to have or create an optimal mind, body, and spirit to be, well, right? So either malnutrition or toxicity. And then we've talked about all these other concepts. So again, go through, make sure you know how to be emotionally balanced. Make sure you know how to detox. Make sure that you're moving your body, that you're exercising, making sure that you're paying close attention to your diet, what foods you're taking in, that they are as healthy, as organic, as clean, quote unquote, as possible. Not fast foods, not junk foods, not foods that are full of hydrogenated oils that will sit on the shelf and not go, quote unquote, bad for years, even though we know they're bad to start with, right? And making sure that you review some of those stress release techniques, right? And that you know how to relieve stress and how to not allow stress to make you sick. Okay, so I am scrolling through for other, okay, so yeah, if so somebody's still listing their email, I won't be able to email you. I want you to email me to request the packet, and I'll happily send that to you. Okay, great. Yes, I am so glad you all have enjoyed the presentation. This is the last one. I hope you submitted your information for your certificates. And chances are I may see some of you even next week, because if you continue to get on the calls, we always welcome you. We also welcome you and new friends, people you refer for the next set of classes. But if you don't have any other questions, I think my time is up. Thank you all for joining me today. And as always, what do I say? I bid you good health and peace.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right.
Okay, enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you, Yvonne.
Okay, so up next we have Dr. Wright Tyrene. Can you hear us?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you all hear me? Okay, and you'll see me in a second, but I'm going to start out. This is our last session. Hello. You'll see me momentarily, but the first thing you're going to see is just where I want us to bring our attention to. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, which is to everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, because I know we're in all different places. You'll see me momentarily, but I'm going to start out with the documentary that we were supposed to watch this week. It was called Cuba, an African Odyssey. It was posted in the group. And I'm going to open up with what is considered the most important assassination of the 20th century, which was the assassination of Patrice Lumumba, and how that spoke to this issue of continental liberation of Africa and the highest expression of what we would consider Pan-Africanism. So I don't want to break up my session with showing that. So I'm just going to show you about 5 minutes of it to share my screen. And then after 5 minutes, then I come back. Well, not come back. I'll be there with you. So I'll be here with you, but you'll see me for the rest of the session. So I have it in queue. Yvonne, permission, right? To share my screen?
Yes, you're able to share your screen.
Okay, great. No problem. So let me just get to, I have it queued, but let me make sure. Hold on 1 second. And I have other interruptions, sorry. Okay. So if you all want to know, most of you should have watched the entire thing. For those of you who have not, I'm just going to bring it in context. Sorry, it went a little further than I wanted it to go. So I'm having a moment where it won't get back on cue. Bear with me. Okay. Okay. Make it. Okay. Okay. Here we go.
July 1991 in Havana. It is Nelson Mandela's first trip outside Africa since his release from 27 years of prison. But why would the legend of struggle against oppression decide that the first person he wants to thank for helping to end apartheid is Fidel Castro, the very man who is regarded in the West as an oppressor of his own people? Fidel Castro and 500,000 Cubans took part in the African wars, which ultimately ended colonialism. This little-known story began in 1960, only a year after Cuban revolutionaries triumphed. Their struggle had captured people's imagination, and the young feisty leaders, Fidel Castro and Che Guevara, emerged from 3 years of guerrilla war as heroes. The wave of independence in Africa was spreading like wildfire. That year alone, 17 African countries gained independence, and 30 others started their revolutionary armed struggle. African revolutionaries were looking to the Cubans as a model for their own independence. Cuba was living proof that David could beat Goliath.
La gran humanidad ha dicho basta y ha echado a andar. Y su marcha de gigantes ya no se detendrá hasta conquistar la verdadera independencia. Quería referirme específicamente al doloroso caso del Congo, único en la historia del mundo moderno, que muestra cómo se puede burlar con la más absoluta impunidad, con el cinismo más insolente, el derecho de los pueblos.
Che Guevara was revolted, and his speech gave a clear signal that Cuba intended to act. The case of Patrice Lumumba in the Congo was symbolic of how African independence would be crushed by Cold War strategic interests. It was Lumumba's assassination that sparked a new era for many African revolutionaries, and with it started the epic of Cuba and Africa.
Let me just say, can you all hear me? Yvonne, can you tell me if you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. So this, we're not watching the whole video, of course, because I'm going to lecture, but this is just the portion on Patrice Lumumba, because it is significant, not just for Africa, but for the world to understand this, and also for you to understand how much the world opposes African unity, Black unity in Africa, around the world, globally, okay? So it sort of frames it in a way where we understand that while we may think that our unity, Pan-Africanism, is inconsequential to anyone else, because Africa is the source of the world's most or greatest or strongest or most valuable resources, because Africa has a concentration of the world's population, because Africa has fastest growing entrepreneur markets, yes, there is opposition to Pan-Africanism, okay? And this is you could say, case study of it, but in the most extreme way, because what will happen in the Congo was that unification would challenge world powers in terms of resources, meaning whether the West or the Eastern Bloc, the Soviets or Russia, controls Africa, and I can't stress that enough, whether the West, the Americas and Europe, or the East, Russia, controls Africa, matters to them, okay? Because of its strategic position and resources in the world, all right? So this is sort of a take on the opposition to African unity, and the other word for African or Black unity is Pan-Africanism.
The Congo, one of the largest and richest countries on the continent. The Belgian colony was demanding immediate independence. Patrice Lumumba, the young articulate clerk, led the movement that negotiated a peaceful solution to end Belgian rule. On June 30th, 1960, King Baudouin arrived in Leopoldville, the capital named after his great uncle, to hand over power.
le roi Baudouin était dans une voiture découverte. Il saluait la foule, etc. Un Congolais s'est précipité sur la voiture. J'ai vu les gardes du roi dégainer. Et tout le monde avait peur, se disait il va tuer le roi. Non, il a simplement sorti l'épée du roi de sa gaine. Et il s'est mis à danser avec cette épée. C'est très symbolique ça. C'est comme s'il lui a arraché le pouvoir.
On Independence Day, all the dignitaries assembled in Parliament. King Baudouin was to announce the transfer of power to the new government. Patrice Lumumba had just been elected Prime Minister. But the euphoria of independence did not last long. That same day, Lumumba lit a fire that spread through the entire continent.
L'indépendance du Congo constitue l'aboutissement de l'œuvre conçue par le génie du roi Léopold II.
Le discours du roi Baudouin, qui nous rappelait comment la Belgique nous a sortis de l'esclavage, comment ils ont lutté pour nous sortir des maladies du sommeil et patati patata. Ça a été un choc. Nous ne nous attendions pas à ce rappel malheureux parce que nous estimions que le roi Baudouin n'avait plus de leçons à nous faire ce jour-là.
À ce moment-là, Lumumba se lève, qui n'était pas programmé comme devant parler à ce moment-là. Il se lève et il parle. Il fait un discours très militant.
Combattant de l'indépendance, aujourd'hui victorieux, je vous salue au nom du gouvernement congolais. Nous avons connu les ironies, les insultes, les coups que nous devions subir matin, midi et soir, parce que nous étions des nègres.
Rappelez-vous comment on traitait le blanc par rapport au noir. Rappelez-vous dans les écoles quelle place nous occupions. Rappelez-vous tout l'apartheid. Alors évidemment, réaction immédiate de toute la délégation. D'abord, beaucoup d'agitation pendant que le monde parle.
Qui oubliera enfin les fusillades où périt tant de nos frères, ceux qui ne voulaient plus se soumettre au régime d'injustice, d'oppression et d'exploitation.
C'était mal reçu par les Belges, mais nous avons tout à fait répondu à nos aspirations.
Et on demande à Lumumba de présenter des excuses. Il ne s'en fait pas. Il présente les excuses en disant « Je pensais que je devais dire à cet homme des choses, je les ai dites, donc si ça blessé, je m'en excuse et je demande qu'on tourne la page et que nous puissions voir les choses autrement. » Mais il était trop tard. La majesté était lésée. Et la majesté lésée a décidé le soir même de se venger et tout a commencé.
Lumumba wanted to govern independently, but there were only 30 university graduates in the Congo, so it was agreed that for the next 5 years, Belgium would continue to run the important departments of the new state, including the army. The soldiers felt excluded from the newly acquired freedom. Within days, they started a mutiny, which led to the breakdown of the entire country.
The troops were roaming the streets, all armed. And it was quite a racial problem. The mutineers were there, and they had matiti, that's bushes on their helmet, which was a sign that they were prepared for action, for combat. And I can remember one yelling, "Venez, venez, sale flamand." We were all dirty Flemish. That was some an expression that meant you were really bad, and we're going to kill you. More stories circulated about killing, rape, pillage, etc. It was, if you will, the Iraq of today.
Le juillet, retenez bien la date, les militaires de Njili, ici, ils ont organisé l'agression du Congo en disant, puisque les militaires congolais mutinés se sont attaqués aux femmes, aux enfants et aux officiers, la Belgique n'avait plus aucun autre moyen de protéger ses ressortissants que de faire venir des troupes belges, le 10 juillet.
What are you
10 jours
doing in
après,
my closet?
Lumumba immediately turned to the US for support. The United States had never been a colonizing power, and their democratic principles seemed to guarantee support for people fighting for independence. Fidel Castro himself had chosen the US as his first stop for support when his revolution triumphed a year earlier. But like Castro, Lumumba's attitude did not go down well with the Americans.
I was in the lobby of the embassy when this little Congolese clerk came in and he said he wanted 24 visas. He didn't know what a visa was. I said, well, do you have passports to put the visas in? No, patron. He didn't. So I explained to him what a visa was. And I said, why do you need 24? Well, he said, Lumumba's going to the States to see President Eisenhower. I said, oh, that's interesting. Told the ambassador, he said, I'm not aware of it. So he checked, and Eisenhower said, well, if he comes, I'll be here.
Monsieur le secrétaire d'État, c'est avec un réel plaisir que je me trouve aujourd'hui aux États-Unis, pays de démocratie et de liberté, pour prendre contact avec vous.
Lumumba couldn't have made a worse impression on the Secretary of State and his deputy and other people with whom he met there. He threatened, he asked for things, including to have a woman sent around to his room.
The visit was not a success, and it was clear that Washington would not come to his rescue. Just as Lumumba was leaving Washington, Cuba announced the nationalization of US companies, and a trade embargo was immediately imposed on the island. Lumumba, like Castro, soon discovered that the Soviet Union was more than happy to help where the US would not.
À ce moment-là, Lumumba commet probablement la deuxième erreur. Ils prennent la décision, ils font un télégramme adressé à Khrouchtchev pour lui demander l'envoi des troupes de l'Union soviétique pour venir chasser les Belges. Ce télégramme, avant même qu'il ne sorte, est volé au secrétaire de Lumumba par son ancien directeur de cabinet qui s'appelait Kandolo Damien. Larry Devlin s'accapare du télégramme, les transmet au gouvernement américain.
We became aware of it almost immediately, and it came from Congolese sources. That immediately alerted the Americans. I became wide-eyed at that. I said, we have a problem here. He tried to play off the West against the East. It's an old game, but it was relatively new at that time in Africa.
Mais Larry Devlin ne l'a pas pris comme ça, il l'a pris pour dire, voilà, la preuve est là, que le monde est communiste par conséquent. Outre le fait qu'il a insulté le roi des Belges, il est communiste, donc il faut le chasser du pouvoir.
The Congo crisis was becoming more than just a local conflict in faraway Africa. The superpowers were taking a particular interest, especially Moscow, that had recently set up a bureau for aiding anti-colonial liberation movements.
The Soviet Union was eager to help, or at least agreed to help, the legally elected Congolese government. That was in the last days of July, when a squadron of our Ilyushin 14 transport planes, about 10 left for Leopoldville. By the way, they landed in Athens, at the airport, which was partly NATO base. It became a big noise. The whole noise about the Cold War started when we landed there.
It was the first time that there'd ever been Soviets in that part of Africa, at least, certainly not the Congo, and very few in the rest of Africa, because the colonial powers were not desirous of having the Soviets there.
Третий мир в этой войне был полем, так сказать, для охоты. Перевели вам? Полем для охоты. Почему? В Европе границы были забетонированы. Перейти границу означало начать атомную войну, которую никто не хотел. А третий мир, он был как будто без хозяина. Там была возможна свободная охота. Там можно было приобретать влияние.
We believed, and I think it's true, that it was an attempt to hold Congo as a base, especially as a base of minerals for the United States, for the West. We should not forget that the first atomic bomb was done of those uranium found in Congo.
There are only two countries in the world that supplied cobalt at that time, Soviet Union and the Congo. And cobalt is extremely important for jet engines and all sorts of high technology. And we could not get it from the Soviet Union because it was a security commodity. So Congo was our only source.
I suspect that the people in Washington began wondering where are we going to get our cobalt from if the Soviets managed to control that.
The United States deplores the unilateral action of the Soviet Union in supplying aircraft and other equipment for military purposes to the Congo. The Soviet action, which seems to be motivated entirely by the Soviet Union's political designs in Africa. I must repeat that the United States takes a most serious view of this action by the Soviet Union.
Eisenhower fumed about aggressive Soviet support for his opponents. Soviet military aid for Lumumba arrived in the Congo only 1 month after the first Soviet arms shipment had landed in Cuba. To make matters worse, Castro openly declared that he intended to use these weapons to export his revolution. Eisenhower decided to send the CIA into action.
I received a message saying that people in Washington were highly concerned about the activities of the prime minister, and that they hoped that he would go, there would be a change in the government. The next thing I knew, I received a cable saying that someone by the name of Joe would arrive in Leopoldville, and I was to take my instructions from him. And the instructions were that I was to remove him physically from, in other words, assassinate Lumumba. I asked first, whose instructions are these? And he said, they've come from President Eisenhower. The president wanted this done, and I was to put together these poisons and bring them out to you. One of the poisons was a tube of toothpaste that had poison in it. So that if he'd brushed his teeth with it, that was been the end of the man. All of these things I put in my safe because I didn't want them lying around the office. If somebody may say, may I use your toothpaste? I felt that I had some pretty good operations going, and in the long term, my operations would achieve the objective of removing Lumumba from office, but not killing him.
The Congo plunged into utter chaos. In the confusion, two separate secession movements broke away from Lumumba's government. The country desperately needed to be brought under control.
The United States started to worry about it because the Soviets were backing Lumumba. So President Eisenhower said, well, we may have to use NATO there to keep the Soviets out. But finally, cooler heads prevailed, and they asked the UN Security Council to send a peacekeeping operation to the Congo. President Eisenhower made some very basic policies which are still in existence today. And he said that if there are troubles in Africa, we don't want to have to send troops there. Well, Europeans should not send troops. It should all be done by the UN.
Lumumba thought that the arrival of the UN peacekeepers would help him bring stability. He was wrong. The UN mission provided the missing ingredient to oust his government. Lumumba had just promoted his personal secretary, Joseph Mobutu, to Army Chief of Staff. Mobutu was to coordinate with the UN troops to stop the country's descent into anarchy. Instead, he turned to Larry Devlin.
Mobutu said that the army was very unhappy with the prime minister because he was turning the army over to the Soviets. He wanted to mount a coup d'etat, but there was one condition. They had to know that they would have the support of the United States government. I had tried and failed to achieve by legal means what they wanted, the United States government wanted. So I stood up and shook his hand. Finally, it took me a while to do this, and said, I guarantee you the support of the United States government. And the coup, he said the coup will take place within a week, and it did.
UN troops were supposed to protect the independence of Congo, but they would not allow the Congolese troops, which were loyal to Lumumba, to operate. The mission of the United Nations troops was misused to topple the regime of the government of Lumumba, or at least not to protect Lumumba.
Les troupes des Nations Unies ici vont encercler la résidence du Premier ministre. Sans aucun mandat, sans aucune autorisation, il y a une crise interne, les Nations Unies s'interposent et vont mettre le Premier ministre en résidence surveillée.
Lumumba's supporters organized his escape. He was sneaked out of his house, bundled up in the back of a government car.
Le bruit s'est répandu que Lumumba était parti de chez lui. On a commencé à le chercher. Mobutu a demandé aux Nations Unies de lui donner des hélicoptères. On l'a poursuivi. On l'a arrêté. On les a mis dans un hélicoptère. On l'a ramené ici, ligoté, comme un vulgaire bandit.
On Mobutu's orders, Patrice Lumumba was sent to his death. It was barely 6 months since Congo celebrated independence.
C'était terrible. Vous enlevez celui qui est le flambeau, l'icône, tout d'un coup, comme ça, et d'une façon très barbare, en utilisant les mains africaines. Alors c'était frustrant, c'était écœurant, c'était un appel à l'insurrection populaire. Il faut venger cela. Ce pays est à nous et je vais me battre pour lui. C'était l'étincelle qui m'a fait conduire sur le chemin du maquis, de la guérilla.
A witch hunt tracking down Lumumba's followers started in the capital. One by one, the Lumumbas fled to the safe haven across the river in Brazzaville. They organized themselves into an armed rebellion led by the 23-year-old Laurent Kabila. Lumumba's assassination resonated throughout the world. The shock was felt clearly in Cuba, where a large percentage of the population traces its origins back to the Congo. Cuba's young revolutionary leaders were appalled. The island declared a 3-day official mourning in honor of Lumumba's memory.
Bajo la bandera de las Naciones Unidas en el Congo fue asesinado Lumumba. Y esas eran las Naciones Unidas que pretendían los norteamericanos que vinieran a inspeccionar nuestro territorio. Esas mismas Naciones Unidas.
Cuba shared Africa's revolutionary quest for real independence. What happened to Lumumba could happen anywhere if no action was taken. Fidel Castro decided that Cuba could not stand by idly. So Che Guevara went on a 2-month tour of Africa to assess how they could help local liberation movements.
Okay, so I'm going to end right there. I know you guys can see my screen. I'm on my phone. Okay, so I'm going to stop the share. And you should see me. Okay. Can you see me? Okay, yeah, I think you can see me.
Yes,
Okay,
we can
so,
see you.
okay, perfect. So that was from Cuba and African Odyssey. And the point of it all is not to fixate on Cuba, even though it is a great model in terms of supporting Pan-Africanism. Two important points. Cuba would assist, and I might give you a blip of Amilcar Cabral in Guinea-Bissau and Cape Verde, in terms of understanding what unity will take in individual African nations. And unity, yes, is synonymous with Pan-Africanism, because I think some of you, and even in the previous classes, have suggested or directly asked questions about, ethnic differences and how we manage the ethnic differences in Africa in particular as we struggle towards Pan-Africanism. And the case with Amilcar Cabral and Guinea-Bissau is instructive in that way, because yes, we're always dealing with that. We don't want to pretend that the process of forging unity is not sometimes through serious pressure and sometimes fire, conflict, right? In order to bring us into, or bring us to the same page in terms of unity. But the case of Patrice Lumumba, so that's coming later. So the case of Patrice Lumumba is a perfect case study in terms of understanding Africa's position and African people's position and role in the world, and what our unity comes up against in light of that. So this past week, you got readings, and the readings were several that were from organizational bodies that came together. You got one from Nkrumah, you got the first Pan-African Congress, right? Remember, first Pan-African Conference, 1900. The Pan-African Congresses start in 1919 onward. The most insignificant would be the 1945 Manchester Congress, where heads of states from the African continent will, in a definitive way, say that there is a need for total liberation and independence of the African continent. And we know that in particular, Ghana, the first independent African nation in light of colonialism, would also say, led by Nkrumah, that Ghana's independence is, you're hearing two voices. Somebody can help out because somebody's hearing two voices. And I only got one voice here. I don't have any background noise going on here. Can somebody, all right, pause for a second. Yvonne, are you hearing two voices?
No.
Okay, so it might be a problem with that person's audio, or they might have something running in the background. You shouldn't hear two voices. So To get back to what I was saying, Ghana in particular, as we know, with their independence, 1957-58, would be the first independent or first African nation to throw off the cloak of colonialism. And Nkrumah, a visionary, would make it clear that he's not just out for the independence and liberation of Ghana, but the total liberation and independence of the continent is essential. Hold on one second. So, okay, I had some background noise, so I want to make sure that that's not what you guys are hearing, because I know these things are sensitive. But the point is that Nkrumah would make it clear that the total liberation and independence of Ghana should not be inconsequential to the rest of the continent, that this should signal that the rest of the African continent would follow, okay? And so we have that document, right? Please keep these documents, because these documents are important. I'm going to go through them. I'm going to share screen, but I just wanted, to see you all, for you to see me for 2 seconds in light of that footage on Patrice Lumumba, and to give that some context. So, then you have other subsequent documents, Haile Selassie to the League of Nations, and and of course a piece from Amilcar Cabral. And I'll go through all of those in short, just to frame them. Please keep some of these documents, because they're not necessarily easy to find or put your hands on. So you should come out of this course with, what my professor at Tuskegee used to call a war book, or you could call it a unity book, in the sense that you have some real important critical documents that would take some time to put together on your own right here. So download them, save them in a file. Some of you might decide to print them. It's worth it. So you have them on hand and understanding our history, because what you should learn from this course is that this is not the first time we are attempting to unify Black people, African people, to the benefit of Black people and African people. It's not the first time. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel in terms of the level and the intention of such organization. It's very important to understand that, because very often we feel like we're the first ones. No, we're on a continuum throughout time. And we must understand, even before 1900, with the first Pan-African Conference, that we were pushing towards unity as well, right? So that's the first time in a constituted way we have the word Pan-Africanism used, but it is not the first time we attempt to support each other in order to protect each other from what? Racism, xenophobia, and or we can use the language exploitation and oppression, which is the original definition, bare bones definition that comes out of the first Pan-African Conference, right? For those of you who are still want to, fortify your understanding of the definitions, please go back to the chapter on Booker T. Washington, Pan-Africanism and Pan-Africanists, right? Because it gives you not only the bare bones definition at 1900, but it also gives you, the form of Pan-Africanism that Washington would have been a proponent of, right? Independence through industry, but also the form of Pan-Africanism Marcus Garvey would have engaged, Africa for Africans. And of course, he reaffirms this idea of independence through industry, meaning we own the resources, we own the land, we owned whatever is the valuable resource in the context that we are in, as opposed to us being exploited in those contexts. And then it gives you Du Bois' definition, right? Du Bois attempts to do it organizationally. And then it brings you up to beyond Washington and gives you a semblance of the type of Pan-Africanism that Nkrumah, Kwame Osagyefo, Kwame Nkrumah would be a proponent of, which is Pan-Africanism is the unification of Africa under scientific socialism. And I'm going to make a little point about the Eastern Bloc and the socialists and the Marxist-Leninist line. Because I come from an organization, and I have a lot of education. I skipped my bio or whatever, because I don't really feel it's important, but I will, I guess before we close out today, say a couple of things about my credentials or whatever. However, what I say more often than my academic degrees is, that I was in a political organization that put me in a position to go into the academy and be successful at pursuing my my credentials. Okay, but Nkrumah and many other people, not just on the African continent, but you see in this film, you have the Eastern Bloc, right? The Soviets, who are engaging Africa, okay, as an alternative to dealing with the West, who overtly is exploitative. And I'm not going to say that Russia is not, because the history of Russia and Cuba, that is a complicated history as well, okay? That being said, this is what I want to say about the orientation, the Marxist-Leninist line and orientation in light of Africa. What we must understand is the fact that Marx and Lenin, even though I have gone through that education process too, right? Because Nkrumah has that same orientation. You must understand that Marx and Lenin were not thinking about us, African people, Black people, when they wrote what they wrote, okay? And so we cannot completely adopt their line, okay, because of the simple fact that our oppression, the form of oppression that is imposed on African people, the form of exploitation that is imposed on African people is designed to make us ahistorical, not deal with our history, and to disconnect us from our culture. Part of what colonialism did was kitten, and he wants to come into the frame. Part of what colonialism did was disconnect us from our culture, and in some instances forbid us to exhibit and engage in our culture. Example, why am I speaking English? Because I'm an African person who has been colonized, right? This should look crazy to you that I'm speaking English, okay? That is the mark of colonialism, colonial domination, linguistic domination. So in the process, the liberatory process, we must take back our culture, and we can't adopt the Marxist-Leninist line to the degree that we don't take back our culture. So let me be more specific. The Marxist-Leninist line says culture and history are not relevant in the liberatory process. And for us as African people, that does not apply, okay? Culture and history are tools of liberation. We are engaging in that very process right now. We are revisiting the history as a means of the liberatory process so that you fully understand Pan-Africanism, because our forefathers, right, our ancestors laid out a roadmap to this very struggle that we are still engaging in. We can't negate that. This is how we utilize that, invoking the history, right? So we don't want to think that we're the first ones to ever think of any of this. We're not the first ones to think of this. We are not the first ones to be challenged with this issue of racism, white supremacy and culture, and worldwide domination and imperialism and colonialism, and yes, neo-colonialism. We're not the first ones. So we can take instruction from the past. That is our history. We have to use it as a tool of liberation. Culture, absolutely, culture. We can use that as a tool of liberation. Amilcar Cabral, as I said, I'm going to get into briefly Amilcar Cabral is instructive and gives prescription for how that's going to play out in his particular West African nation known as Guinea-Bissau, right? And as well as Cape Verde, because they're connected in their struggle against the Portuguese. But his line, although having a Marxist-Leninist orientation, like many of the budding African nationalists at this moment in time on the African continent are, in spite of that, he invokes history, he invokes culture, because he recognizes, and this is something that many of you have in the past classes, and some of you have alluded to here, the condition of African people prior to colonialism is that we had many nations, right? We had many Ashanti Nation, Ga Nation, Tree Nation. We had many nations. We understand what the imperialists did. They came and they cut sometimes borders between people who were organically the same people. They made these false lines. They drew these false borders between us, right? And pushed you together with some people who were very different neighbors, historical neighbors, but are different, right? In the language and culture, right? I do believe in what Sheikh Anta Diop says, the cultural unity of Black Africa. If you don't know about that book, that might be something you want to read, because it talks about the common thread throughout all African cultures. However, we are diverse. We are not all the same. We don't need to be all the same. We just need to be good at who and what we are. That being said, Amilcar Cabral, in the struggle for liberation, knew that he had to, one, forge some level of Pan-Africanism amongst African people who were very different, right? And at the same time, get them to rise to the level and occasion of waging armed struggle in their nation against the Portuguese to take their nation back. The way he does that is this: he refuses Cuba's troops, which they do offer, and accepts strategic military instruction from Fidel Castro. But he says only the people of Guinea-Bissau should fight this struggle, because through the struggle, we will achieve unity. People who had never been unified before will forge unity through this common struggle. And so his direct phrase, to quote him, is that the struggle will prepare the people for the victory of nationhood for the first time to their benefit, right? So the multitude of ethnicities is not ignored in that instance. And that's what we have to take away from that particular point in terms of, one, the line we adopt in terms of Pan-Africanism. We don't need to give shine to either the Eastern or the Western Bloc, Europeans, in terms of what we need to do as Africans for our unity. But two, know that this is not the first time that we have been together and different ethnically, but the same in terms of our common issue and problem. And through this struggle, right, against our opposers, colonizers, imperialists, and yes, neo-colonialists, we forge unity. We become one, okay, in the way that we need to be, right? Without erasing our ethnicity, without becoming our oppressors, right? We are able, through this common struggle, to forge a level and a measure of unity to our benefit. And that's the significance in terms of Amilcar Cabral's approach to the struggle of liberation. And this is part of the reason why I refer to the unification of the African continent, the liberation struggles that would take place, as the highest expression of Pan-Africanism, because it's not for trinkets. It's not just so we can insulate ourselves. Sure, that's part of it, and that's the larger picture of it. But it is more for the purpose of us coming together to fight off something that is impacting us worldwide, but more importantly, the continent of Africa, okay? We can't deny the strategic position and importance of Africa. And yes, its most important resource, the human beings there and taken out of there, okay, out of Africa. So the highest expression would be felt on the continent, although Pan-Africanism as a budding concept, as a concept in general, is coming out of the diaspora, and we are meeting in a neutral place in Europe sometime, in whatever place, in order to discuss and organize and plan how we forge unity, okay? And so continental unity is something that's still a struggle. I'm going to switch lanes now to go back to the issue of organizational bodies, because you guys have learned a lot of specific things in this course. Organizational bodies, and I'm about to go to the documents I just sent you, so, last week, so that you can see how this particular issue of continental unity, the highest form of Pan-Africanism, over again is revisited in various bodies. And when you look at, I'm not going to delve deep into them because of time, but when you look at what the demands are and the structures of those organizations, you will see our issues are age-old issues around, one, protecting ourselves from foreign, from non-African entities decimating our population, destroying the resources, invading, giving us puppet governments to undo any progress that we've done. All of these things are not new, right? They are not new. And you will see at the end of each document, at each organizational event, you will see that ultimately the concept is to the benefit of African people, okay? If you ever go to a meeting and the ultimate bottom line does not benefit African people, Black people, and I use that interchangeably, but because for me, I believe in the primacy of Africa, okay? So that is always the crux of it, because we're going to talk about the world and how we're going to forge ahead and have our impact on the world. We have to deal with the source, okay? That is Africa. That is how people like me get out here in the diaspora, because of having been a continental African who was a human resources taken out of Africa, right? So we've got to go back to the source, as Camille Coco-Brown says, return to the source. But if the benefit to a organized meeting, an organized effort, is not to the benefit of African people, Black people, then it's not Pan-African. Present day dilemma, the African Union, born out of the Organization of African Unity. Today, 60% of the funding of the African Union comes from what? The European Union. Huge problem. We should be looking at every step of the way as to whether or not what the African Union produces is actually good and beneficial for African people and African nations. Very easy barometer if you take emotion out of it, right? The Organization of African Unity, led by Nkrumah initially, is a body that comes together to work on the total liberation of the continent of Africa and the total unification of the continent of Africa. It's not to say that I believe in, or any of us should believe in, a United States of Africa. We don't need to replicate the West, but we need an Africa that is unified to the benefit of African people, whatever that's called, right? So we've got to come out with our own paradigms and models and build on what we already have in terms of what our unity looks like. But without any compromise, unity should always be to our benefit. Insulate us from a hostile world, from a hostile society, a hostile world, and ensures that we are not exploited. The continent, the people, right? The resources. And when utilized, it is to the benefit of African people. And like I said, this is an age-old dilemma. This is an age-old problem that we have been constantly trying to solve, but we should not ever think that we're out here on a limb and that the historical continuum that we are on is new. We are not. We can invoke all those people, Patrice Lumumba and Nkrumah, Amilcar Cabral, and others who are in this same struggle at different points, okay? So I'm gonna just take myself off the camera, go to the documents. They all should be there in the WhatsApp group. But I'm gonna share them for those of you who don't have them on hand. And I'm just going to give a cursory understanding of this. There's one document to the League of Nations by Haile Selassie where it's very interesting. He is saying to them that you have not fulfilled the promise you have made to the League of Nations to protect from invasion, from exploitation. And he's very right. But we have to also delve into what the League of Nations was. It wasn't a body initiated by Africans for African people to the protection of African people. It was a Western initiative, right? And so their highest commitment is to those Western nations who exploit African nations and African people. So he's talking to deaf ears, and we need to see that too, so we don't make the same mistake ultimately. But there are other entities and organizational bodies that address this issue that we will also look at, okay? So I'm gonna take my camera off 1 second, and I'm gonna get you the documents. And then I will be sharing my screen once again. Yvonne, can I get a time check? I don't have the time. Oh wait, no, I have it. Okay, so I have to do this quick because I really only have 4 minutes and I don't want to take up too much of your time. I'm infamous for going over time because there's really just so much to cover. What you're going to get as while I'm about to bring up the documents, what you're going to get at the end of this course is really just a sort of cheat sheet and what you know, what you should have come out of this course with, and you'll see on Monday from me. And you know, really, you can just affirm those things. And if you didn't learn those things, you can go back and look at it, because of course I'll make it, you know, reference based, all the relevant resources that were given to you that are relevant to that particular item on what you should know or what you should have learned. Okay. So I'm going to start with the Pan-African Conference resolutions. Okay, so Pan-African Congress resolutions. Remember, Du Bois, sole survivor of the first Pan-African Conference. I don't want anybody in this course to come out of here and not to know the difference between the conference, first Pan-African Conference, 1900, and the congresses, which were continuous, right? And I used the word before, on a continuum. So the congresses were continuous from 1919 on. And this gives you the first and the last Congress. So the Pan-African Congress resolution, and you know that it's a Congress, but the actual event, right, is a meeting. So you can say it's a conference or the meeting if you'd like, but the Congresses would have 5. The first, 1919. And these are some of the resolutions, which, as you know, the resolutions are always important because those are the commitments. Those are the agreements that come out of a meeting, right? So here you have the resolutions. I'm just going to tap on a couple of them. The Allied Association Powers established a code of law for the international protection of the natives of Africa, similar to the proposed international code for labor. right? That the League of Nations established a permanent bureau charged with the special duty of overseeing the application of these laws to the political, social, and economic welfare of the natives. This is the interesting thing because we can't look to the League of Nations to do anything. So this is one thing that's problematic, but you see how I'm assessing that, right? League of Nations is not an African body. The Pan-African Congress is, right? And so, you know, the compliance there may be problematic, but as you can see right here, you see land, capital, labor, education, the state, you see some of the various resolutions in that area that are made. Now, as you saw right here on the top of the page to the right, Paris 1919, the first Congress, right? Du Bois and others, the initiator of it, Du Bois being the sole survivor of the 1900 conference. Why do I say he's the sole survivor? He's the youngest at the 1919 conference. He is the only one living in 1919. What if he had forgotten? What if he were not committed? You know, Du Bois had many issues and contradictions, double consciousness being one of them. But he still emerges to do what he needs to do for African people. Okay, and that's important. Do what you got to do for us, right? So that's very direct for our ambassadors. Do what you ensure that you're going to do what you are supposed to do for African people. Okay, you might do a whole bunch of other stuff, but do what you need to do for us. And in his instance, he remembered. Okay, and he champions the cause in the world on a large scale, right? Can you imagine the person from the diaspora having something to do with creating a body that grows into another body that is the think tank or the setting for ultimately the Organization of African Unity, where and then ultimately the space where African leadership says, no, we are going to take back our continent. And over at least 17 African nations between 1962 and 63 will take their nations back. Okay, that was the setting. That's what organization can do for you. Okay, 1945, the 5th Pan-African Congress, right? Very important. So you have the two most important congresses here. And that's important to note because you want to keep this in your arsenal of documents when you need to be reaffirmed about why you're doing what you're doing. Here you go, okay? It is a constant and continuous struggle. So I'll read just briefly in the beginning. In connection with the political situation, the Congress observed that since the advent of British, French, Belgian, and other Europeans in the West Africa, there has been regression instead of progress as a result of systemic exploitation by these alien imperialist powers. The claims of partnership, trusteeship, guardianship, and the mandate system do not serve the political wishes of the people of West Africa. So he asserts this about most of the territories in Africa, but he deals with West Africa here in particular, or West Africa is dealt with here, because this is not an individual person. This is a body, right? The Congress of 1945, the Pan-African Congress in Manchester. Anyway, it goes on, and you can look at that. Every area of life is addressed here in the resolutions: economic, okay, the land, the workers, meaning the people, the mining, the resources, the exploiters, right? The British government in West Africa, so the settlers in Africa, on and on and on. And so it's important to see, once again, we are addressing the same issues. What our job is to take the best strategies and tactics from these meetings and apply it to what you're doing today, okay? And once again, I can't stress this enough. As you, as ambassadors, understand your role, you should always be checking and saying, is this good for African people? How does this serve African or Black people? Okay, that's our ultimate goal. We are people, you know, just to break out, we are people who need so much because so much has been taken from us: life, limb, land, resource, you name it. So we can never not have people who are on the case to our benefit and not to our detriment. All right. And yes, it matters. The simple idea as you go out and qualify spaces that are safe for us, and as you challenge people around you about issues that are unsafe for us amongst our own people, right? Because that's what xenophobia is, us acting out white pathology, okay, on each other. You have to bring it down to the very basic everyday understanding of what is good, what is beneficial, what is serving us as a people now and beyond, okay? And this helps you when you look at the particulars in these organizational bodies, you get an understanding that they were not leaving anything out, right? Declaration to the colonial powers. The delegates believe in peace. How could it be otherwise when for centuries the African peoples have been the victims of violence and slavery? Yet if the Western world is still determined to rule mankind by force, then Africans, as a last resort, may have to appeal to force in the effort to achieve freedom, even if force destroys them and the world. Listen, 1.6 billion on earth and counting, okay? Just picture us all being on the same page, on the same measure, on the same principle, on the same values, okay? So that's extremely powerful. But you can read the rest of it. It's not a long document. Please keep this, organize this in your arsenal. Let me stop the share real quick. Well, actually, no, I'm gonna let you guys see where I'm coming from. So then I'm gonna go to your next document, right? So those of you who are in the course officially, you have these documents, and I'm just going through our documents really quickly, right? Declaration and resolution of the first Conference of Independent African States, right? So 1958, Accra, Ghana. Why Accra, Ghana? Because what? Nkrumah, Ghana has struggled for its independence. And I don't want to take anything away from our brothers and sisters who fought armed struggle. Guinea-Bissau was unique in West Africa, but most of East and Southern Africa would have to engage in armed struggle in order to preserve their nations and forge towards nationhood. And that's important because what happens, the difference, the necessity of armed struggle in East Africa has everything, and Southern Africa has everything to do with the fact that Europeans have the nerve to settle in those places, okay? And it's important to note that. Can everybody still see me? I'm not see me, but see the document? Yvonne, can everybody still see the document?
Yes, we can see the document.
Okay, perfect. All right, so we, the African states, assemble here in Ghana, in Accra, it is Ghana, in this, our first conference, conscious of our responsibilities to humanity, which is us. You saw the Journey of Man, the Genetic Odyssey. You know that humanity is synonymous with African, okay? And yes, Black is a natural characteristic of that. To humanity, and especially to the peoples of Africa, and desiring to assert our African personality on the side of peace, hereby proclaim and solemnly reaffirm unswerving loyalty to the Charter of the United Nations, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and the Declaration of the Asian African Conference held in Bandung. Malcolm X talks about the Conference of Bandung. If I had more time, I would get involved in that, and on, but we don't. The point here is this, let's be very clear. Just so you know, we can only give allegiance to our own bodies because, as you all saw in this piece on Patrice Lumumba, the United Nations undermined African unity. Okay? Side note, for those of you who didn't understand what was going on in the film, just to highlight, Patrice Lumumba was murdered because two major resources, cobalt and coltan, come out of the Congo, among many others. I'm not trying to reduce it to that. However, these cobalt and coltan allow for military armament, nuclear capability on some level, is used by militaries, okay? The Soviets have their own resource, a reserve of one or both of those resources. The West has no resource or reserve for that. If Patrice Lumumba unified the Congo and aligned itself with the Eastern Bloc, that means the United States in the way that you know it now, with nuclear and military capability, would not exist in the way it exists now. Okay, strong arming and bullying the rest of the world. It would not exist in that way. And so it was unequivocal that they would seize the resources. What happened to the Congo in the light of this is that the Congo went from Belgian colonialism to international colonialism. Today, almost every Western nation, the United States at the top, who claims no colonial territories in Africa, would have its hands, really both hands, in Africa. Okay? In the Congo in particular, in order to obtain these resources and stay a superpower in the world. And what does a superpower mean? It means the ability to threaten, destroy, corrupt just about any nation on the earth through force, okay, through the threat of violence. So we can't put too much weight on the United Nations, all right? It interrupted what was the ultimate unity of the Congolese people after years of brutal colonialism under the Belgians and King Leopold I and II and whoever. Okay, they don't even deserve any distinction. The point of this gathering was, though, to declare resolutions for the first Congress of the Independent African States, because now African states would follow Ghana in its independence. And the idea is that they should all be supported in that independence. Okay, so if you haven't read it, it's not really long. The resolutions are at the end. It's only about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pages. And it gives you essentially all the areas, exchange of views on foreign policy, how Africa must relate to the world, right? The further to the future of dependent territories in Africa. The question of Algeria, which was unique in some ways. Racialism, right? Because they racialized this racial pathology, which comes out of the Iberian Peninsula. The Portuguese and the Spaniards are the first to engage in it out of anger. That's a lecture for another day. But as some of you may know, historically, African people went into Europe before Europeans come into Africa, and essentially occupy, right, the Iberian Peninsula. They are known as the Moors. Racialism, so this racial pathology that has been imposed on Africa and on all of us. Step 5, to be taken to safeguard the independence, sovereignty, and territorial integrity of the independent African states, right? So how does one safeguard their independence? Because what we're seeing all too often is African nations, African people achieve unity, engage in the business that is about the benefit and to the benefit of African people, and then have it infiltrated, destroyed, corrupted by West using African people. Okay. So once again, Togoland under French administration, Cameroon's under French administration. Some of you guys on the continent, you know what's going on with Cameroon. We have serious issues around Anglophone and Francophone identity. And I'm definitely in tune with that, and I understand it. But we also must understand how our oppressors, our colonizers, our exploiters co-opt us. And if we are not conscious, This is part of what we're doing here. We're working on our ideological development so we can raise our consciousness so that we're not doing just anything. We're always asking why and whom we are doing what we do for, right? So the setting up of permanent machinery after the conference. So in other words, the bodies that execute what we are trying to do in the benefit. You should read all of those things because it's very important if you have not already read it. Okay, so that's one other document. And then, you know, Nkrumah, of course, Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah, 1909 to 1972, speech at Cairo Summit Conference, Organization of African Unity. As I said, the Congresses would produce the organization and would be the setting that the Organization of African Unity is produced through. Okay, and here you see Nkrumah going about the business of the OAU in Cairo, the need for a union government for Africa. Speech at Cairo Summit Conference, Organization of African Unity, OAU, which eventually becomes the AU, which we need to check and make sure that they stay on message and agenda to do what they need to do for African people. And the number one on the board would be to stop getting your money from the EU so that you can really do what you need to do for African people. And so I'm not going to read this verbatim because I'm way over time, but you can read it for yourselves. I just want to address the closing, how he addresses closing here. And this document also is not that long. And you should know something about it, right? And Nkrumah is charged with being the leadership on the continent around continental unity. Why? Because Ghana is the first African nation to achieve independence from its colonial exploiters. Okay. Okay. Ultimately, I mean, I'm not going to read the whole thing, even this little part, but he talks about the challenge that we're faced and that we have to be affirmed and solid in our understanding. You know, there's a principle in Kwanzaa that talks about self-determination. It's called Kujichagulia. Those of you from East Africa, you know, because that's Kiswahili. Kujichagulia means, you know, that we are self-determining. So we have to determine what our future and fate is going to be. He says, this is the challenge which history has thrust upon us. This is the mandate we have received from our people, that we set about to create a union government for Africa now. And this is also the challenge which Providence and Destinies has thrust upon us. We cannot, we must not, we dare not fail or falter. And so he recognizes that this is our collective challenge that we have to face. And you can say in many ways that Nkrumah is the father of Pan-Africanism on the African continent. He writes much about Pan-Africanism. This is a repeat of that same document. And here is Haile Selassie in 1936, Emperor Haile Selassie, 1892 to 1975, who asserts what happened to Ethiopia. And at the time that he's talking about this is on the other side of the struggle. So, you know, Ethiopia is one of two African nations, the other being Liberia. We talked about that was never colonized. The importance of this is that you should know, and a lot of people don't know this, is that yes, a portion of Ethiopia was seized. It's called present day Eritrea. Those of you who are in that region of the world know that. And yes, we see the issue there. The point is, though, that Mussolini and Italy would try to invade. And what Haile Selassie is saying here is that they did not assist. The League of Nations did not assist African people, but, you know, they survived, okay? They survived. Women and children and men with only natural resources for fighting purposes, okay? Using natural resources in order to fight, no nuclear or military armament to protect themselves, still defeated the Italians who flew planes over them and dropped bombs on them, okay? And so he tells the story of the Ethiopian people, struggle against, and yes, he sort of lambastes, you know, verbally eviscerates this group, the League of Nations, for their lack of protection that they commit to the rest of the world, but withhold from Africa. And this is why it's so important for African people to do what we need us to do, okay? We need to show up for ourselves. We're going to save ourselves. No Western or European entity is going to protect us or our interest in this world. And this is that story of that. But it's a cautionary tale in the sense that why are you even thinking that the League of Nations would have helped you? Okay. Once again, being confused about certain things on that level. So he addresses them, and I'm not going to belabor that point because, you know, unfortunately we don't have more time. And the other thing is that, you know, there are more a recount of the historical detail, right? And so he delivers that speech. This is important. Identity and dignity in the context of struggle. One of my favorite proponents of Pan-Africanism on the continent is Amilcar Cabral. As I told you earlier in the lecture, Amilcar Cabral would be the leader of Guinea-Bissau who would engage in an armed struggle. And just so for the women on here know that armed struggle in Guinea-Bissau, characteristic of it was that the women, the people, were part of that struggle, okay? The armed struggle, where they will come to, how would you say, affirm their unity through struggle. In other words, to say it another way, fight together in order to, for the first time, become a nation, not by force, right? Europeans impose themselves, cut the borders and say, you're one nation, Guinea-Bissau, and we run you. This struggle is for their national independence. And as Amilcar Cabral says, the struggle will prepare the people for the victory of being a nation, okay? Constituting themselves as a nation. And he talks about this, how that identity. So for those of you who are on here and you're experiencing ethnic differences on the continent, we have to recognize our differences and then recognize our commonalities and understand that unity is not something that is like, you know, lemonade sipped on a Sunday afternoon. Unity is achieved through struggle, ideological struggle, and sometimes more than that. We spend all our days in the West and outside of that, proving to these other people who are insignificant in our world story that we're not the deviants or the whatever that they impose on us, right? That we're not the stereotypes. We spend almost zero time engaging each other around our internalization of these stereotypes. So in other words, I'm gonna say it in a succinct way. We spend all our time trying to prove to Westerners, Europeans, and who alike that we're not whoever, whatever stereotype they say we are, okay? And we spend almost no time convincing other African people, other Black people that we have a common interest. We have a common destiny, okay? That we have a common agenda. And we have enough in common, as Sheikh Antajab talks about the culture of unity of Black Africa, to be in the conversation about why our unity is to our benefit. Okay, we have enough in common to struggle around the issue of unity. Unity is our key to unlocking our oppression in the world. It is our armor. It insulates us. It protects us and our interests. There's nothing else for us to do in terms of protecting ourselves from white supremacy and culture, but pursue unity. Like everything in the world depends on it, and it does. Everything in our world depends on it. It's how we protect ourselves and all of our interests, materially and otherwise. So this, Amilcar Cabral gets into these ethnic conversations, okay, about history, about culture. No, don't throw your culture away, okay? Don't throw your culture away, because throwing your culture away is what is affirming colonialism, imperialism, neo-colonialism. Invoke your culture in an effort to reclaim yourself, right? Your people, your culture, your land, all of that. It is a liberatory process, but understand in reclaiming your culture that we are all connected African people in our condition, if not through a cultural unity or a continuity through all of our cultures, okay? A lot different. There's a lot that's different about us, but there's a whole lot that's the same, okay, that we have in common. And our condition, unfortunately, is what we have in common. Okay, so I can't go into the details of this, but it is an important point. You should read it. It will be on the what you should know portion of the material. And then here's the film, which gave you just a blip of Patrice Lumumba. Watch it in its entirety. It is very useful and important in general. I'm just gonna stop the share right now. I'm gonna wrap up there. I'm gonna take a few questions. Can I get a time check? I know I'm over, but I just wanna at least say a little bit. Okay, somebody said something about my email. I don't write my email down, but okay. All I want is to underline your speech is great. Thank you. Union. Can you give me a time check? Because I don't see the time on my end. I'm sorry. Thank you. The documentary is posted in the group. It's called Cuba and African Odyssey. It is free on YouTube. So just type in Cuba and African Odyssey. You'll see part 1 and part 2 there. The presentation, I think that it's recorded here, and I don't control that. I work for I Love Black People because I love Black people. and really I Love Black People controls the content here, even my lectures. So you have to talk to the administrator so how you can get a copy of this. Thank you, Denise Shabazz. Thank you for joining us always. Thank you. You have a great day as well. You pronounced the Kiswahili word and it sounded like another English word. Sorry, that's the scar, the impact of colonial domination, unfortunately. But I do speak a little Wolof, what I retained from years ago, living in Senegal. So Steve, all the people asking for, right, exactly. So much as Africa has. Any requests for this content or what's in the group, please talk to the administrators, right? Like I went over those documents just so the people who are not officially in the class can see what we're talking about. But for the most part, all of that's in there. I named each one of them. I don't know if you'll be able to revisit this video on Facebook, I believe. So, if you get an instant replay, please administrators let everyone know how they can do that, because it's airing live on Facebook. And it's so funny. I never look at the Facebook live session, okay? Because my job is to be prepared for this, so that is my occupation and preoccupation. Yes, the problem with the continent of Africa is the industry, right? We don't have the material, we have the resources, but we don't have the industry. And this is one of the reasons why Washington's method of Pan-Africanism is about building industry, owning and operating. So we need to own the actual industry and machinery. And that's the problem. That's the edge that the West has over us, right? They are the ones coming and establishing plants and the industrial, the industries there, right? Factories where you produce this. And we need to change that, Cuba is a viable model. What Cuba did in order to put the West in check was nationalize everything. It's in your country, it belongs to us. It's in our country, it belongs to us. Now you need to renegotiate. Now, listen, African unity is unlike Asian unity of any kind, unlike Central or South American unity or US unity, whatever you want to call it. You know why? Because all of the world needs Africa. None of the world needs the rest of those places. America can drop off into the ocean. Almost nobody would starve on the other side of the world. It's South America too, okay? Let's not get it twisted. 85% of us go to South America, but it is to no credit of Africa in terms of our struggle. And I'm just going to be clear about that, right? South America has not made any contribution to Africa and is inconsequential to Africa in terms of its liberation or anything else. The point is that, but Africa, okay? As you can see in the case of Patrice Lumumba, if Africa makes a certain move, it will impact the world. Yeah, a bulk of the world's resources, largest population on the earth, youngest population on the earth, okay? Fastest growing entrepreneurship, and the bulk of the world's resources concentrated in the Congo and the 9 surrounding countries. Yes, the rest of the world have so much invested in Africa not being free, liberated, and Pan-African. Yes. We may not have any position on them, but they definitely have a position on us in our unity. Okay. So why is it like this? It's because of machinery. So Denise Shabazz, it's because of industry, right? We own the industry, but we can solve that problem. Sure, there would be bloodshed, but yeah, some African nations need to nationalize everything from the slither of grass to the birds that fly in the place. Nationalize it. Nobody exploits anything here, but I'm gonna stop. Okay. All right, so I'm going to stop there. I saw most of your questions. Most people are sending me emails so that they can get the documents and everything like that. Yeah, I can't share to your emails. That would be great, but the administrator can put it in the comments where you can go on Facebook to see this entire lecture. I named a book. I named a couple of books possibly, but I named Sheikh Anta Diop's book, the cultural unity of Black Africa. But I also mentioned in passing Amilcar Cabral's collection of speeches called Return to the Source, where, that essay on identity, the identity and dignity in the context of struggle, important. He also deals with the role of the diaspora in one of his speeches that's printed in there. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna leave it there. Thank you all so much. I'm sorry that I'm over. This is our last lecture. Look out on Monday for the What You Need to Know. I actually have to travel today, so I'm over because I love doing this. I love Black people. This is, you know, this is what I do. Not simply what I do, but this is my life's work and on many levels, right? So I do this in many different spaces. But the point is that I wanted to just kind of like not be haphazard. I want to be very thorough, at least in addressing our final materials and wrapping up. So I appreciate you all, and forward ever. I love Black people. I am because we are. And I, you know, I'm sure we'll have continued engagement simply because you all are ambassadors, and I will be continuing my relationship, obviously, with I Love Black People. And I appreciate the administrators for doing the due diligence, because sometimes I am like, you know, just not scattered. I'm always clear about what I come to do and who I come to do it for, because that doesn't change for me ever. But, you know, I want to give you a lot of resources to have in your arsenal as you're out there doing the work that you all do. And this ideological development, this space where you develop yourself to do the most important thing you probably ever do, which is to serve us. You know, this goes beyond like a job, so to speak. This is in line with our individual, our collective, our international purpose, right? As Black people, as African people. So I'm always kind of like, you know, choosing what to use or say as opposed to other, you know, sources. So I hope you all enjoyed, but more importantly, I hope you learned something that is valuable in your efforts to love Black people. Okay, so bye-bye, everyone. It's always my pleasure. Okay, and I am because we are. All right.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr.
All
Wright.
right. Okay,
I am
thank
because
you.
we are.
I am because we are.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.